welcome to the Dr. Tim Jennings Show, where we seek real answers to life's real problems. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Jennings, here with my co-host, Lori Atkins.
Hi, welcome to the show today. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the problem of pornography, really the scourge of pornography. I mean, Dr. Jennings, even in our lifetime, there's been such a turnaround in this topic. When I was growing up, this was back alley, taboo. You had to be extremely intentional to even go and find something that would be considered pornography. And today it's done a 180 and it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, it's pervasive, and you actually have to be very intentional in order to avoid it. What would you consider pornography? How do you define pornography today?
You know, that's a classic question that has come up even before. Can't remember what justice said it, but one justice said, you know, I might not be able to find it, but I know it when I see it.
Right? Yes.
But my definition for pornography is material that is intended to flame up sexual lust.
Okay.
Whether it's video or music or
print
or
ad, yes.
ad or whatever the material is, if it's intended to flame up sexual lust, that is pornographic.
Okay. And I mean, with the advent of the internet, cell phones, things like that, like I said, it is literally everywhere. It's in everyone's hands.
Well, this is the problem, because before you had certain social barriers you had to get over.
Yes.
Back before the age of the internet, if a person wanted to get pornographic material, they actually had to face another human being. Mm-hmm. They had to actually pick up a pornographic magazine and put it on the counter, and they had to pay.
Yeah.
And that social stigma for many people was a certain barrier that inhibited pursuing pornographic material, which was helpful. It was actually very
Absolutely.
helpful. The age of the internet has removed that particular assistance for people, and they can secretly participate in pornographic material, which makes it not only more accessible, but I think more addictive as well. And they have done things with the technology to make it more addictive as well.
Yes. So how bad is the porn problem today? I mean, I work in the IT field, and I know we have to take specific measures on our internet, our access at work, to prevent pornography from being viewed in the workplace.
Yeah, and you know, I think some of the data shows 20% of men view pornography while at work. This has a significant economic impact. They're not doing their job.
Yes.
They're viewing pornography, and so that's a serious problem. But I think the data shows that 12% of all material on the internet, 12% of everything on the internet is pornographic. 25% of all web searches, so the search engine, when you put in a search, 1 out of 4 searches going on throughout the day are for pornography. 35% of all downloads are pornography. 70% of men visit pornographic websites regularly, and 30% of women visit pornographic websites regularly.
Those are amazing statistics, not in a good way. So is there a difference in Christian versus non-Christian folks that are doing this? This is not a problem in Christian homes, or not a problem for pastors or anything like that, is it?
Well, you know, it's a sad reality is that the data shows there's no real difference between pornographic use in Christian homes and non-Christian homes. And I think we've talked about this before. That's because much of Christianity has focused on a false premise of the problem that Christianity is designed to. You know, the whole idea of Christianity is that God, through Jesus Christ, is solving a problem. The Bible calls it a sin problem.
Yes.
Okay? The problem with much of Christianity is they've misdiagnosed the problem. And if your diagnosis is wrong, then your solution is wrong. And much of Christianity diagnoses the sin problem as a legal problem. It's a problem. It's a criminal problem where we are criminally found guilty and in God's court of justice, and God has a law that has been broken, and God legally requires payment, and Jesus came to pay a legal payment, and we get the legal payment. And so there's this legal construct. They're solving a legal problem. That is actually not what the Bible teaches. It's not the sin problem. The problem is a problem of heart. Jesus said, you know, if you commit adultery, do bad behavior, you commit sin. I say if you look with lust in your heart,
right.
Okay? So the real Christian approach that actually does result in reduction of these types of behaviors is when there's an internal change of heart. The problem within much of the Christian community is that they're told the problem is the behavior, and the behavior is a bad deed, and if you've done the bad deed, that gets recorded in a record book, and God will have to punish you for the bad deed unless you claim Jesus as your Savior, and then their sin was put on Jesus, and Jesus was punished in your place, and then when the judgment comes, God will look in the record book book and find that your sin payment was paid by Jesus' blood. And so it's all this external to yourself process happening, which is actually a fabrication of reality. It's not true. Okay, that's not what's happening. But it cheats Christians out of actual internal transformation.
Yes.
And what needs to happen instead is that they need to recognize, wait, there's something wrong with me that pursues behaviors that are unhealthy, that are destructive, that are damaging, and I need something changing in my heart, so I don't even want that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the real Christian approach. So the data shows that Christian homes, pornography use are really no different. 70% of youth pastors have at least one teen come to them for help on a regular basis with this problem. And notice, 70% come to them for help.
Yes.
How many teens are likely to come forward and say, I'm having a problem with porn?
Not a lot.
So if one's coming to help, how many are not coming for help, you see? So the problem is bigger than that even. 21% of youth pastors and 14% of all pastors admit that they currently are struggling with porn themselves.
Wow.
So
they would not be in a great position to help someone coming to them for assistance.
So according to the data, 64% of Christians, men have report they're struggling with porn, and 15% of Christian women say they're struggling with porn themselves right now, and that's those who admit that they're doing it.
So tell us what really happens when we're viewing porn. Is there an impact on our brain? Is there an impact on our physiology?
Yeah. So one of the things that I help people understand about how reality works, instead of this imposed law construct we just talked about a moment ago. And what does that mean, imposed law construct? It's like human laws that you have a system of rules that just require external enforcement. I view God as the builder of reality. Okay. Build space, time, energy, life itself. His laws are the parameters upon which reality work. Laws of physics, laws of health, a law of gravity. Okay. One of those laws is called the law of exertion. Okay. If you want something to get stronger, you must exercise it. You know, if you don't use it, you lose it. Yes. This is the law of exertion. And so if you want stronger mathematical abilities, you have to work problems. Stronger music skills, you've got to practice your instrument. People understand this. They know this. Yeah. And what that is actually bringing out into the open is the law of exertion working on the brain. So when you do things that require your brain's involvement, your brain will make new pathways. If you do this repetitively and over again, your brain circuitry changes. So with that law of exertion in mind, if you're a participant in pornography, see? Yes. And you do this repetitively, your brain begins rewiring. And it rewires in a certain way that actually undermines your ability to enjoy normal pleasure. Now, God has created human beings in my design to experience pleasure. But the way our brains are designed, there's a certain way that we experience healthy pleasure, and that's what you might call from top down. Okay. From higher cortex down. We are designed, for instance, if you've studied, worked with a problem, wrestled with a problem, and had an epiphany moment, had a discovery.
A light bulb
moment. A light bulb went off. I think we've all had it. And there's a pleasure in that.
Sure.
Okay? God designed us to be intelligent beings, to reason, to weigh out things. He wants us to have the joy of discovery.
And accomplishment.
And so there's pleasure in that. In marriage relationships as God designed them, where you actually love another person, you care about a person, you come to know that person, you actually are more interested in their happiness than your own. There is to be a joining and a sexual intimacy in the marriage relationship, and that is to be a pleasurable experience. God designed it that way, but it comes after you've actually come to know them for who they are and care about them for who they are first. Helping other people, doing something that might, teaching someone to read who doesn't know how to read, or any type of ministry.
Your time,
Exactly. There is joy and pleasure, and there's many ways all these are top down. Okay. What happens though with pornography is that it goes directly toward activating pleasure circuits without actually coming to care for people. People become...
It's completely anonymous, usually.
Not only anonymous, but the people in the pornography are no longer people. They're objects to stimulate me, to reward me, to make me feel good. I don't care about their happiness. I don't care about their dreams. I don't care about their aspirations. I don't care about what's healthy for them. I don't care the fact that because they're in a porn industry, they're likely to get more sexually transmitted diseght. They might die younger. They're getting exploited. I don't care. I don't care the fact that they might get pregnant out of wedlock. That they might have broken relationships. I don't care about their heartache.
Or that there's someone's sister or daughter or...
We don't care about these things because they're simply there to pleasure us. And then what happens is, as we view porn, then we begin to interact with people. and people become objects for
Right.
us. And it might not always be sexual objects, but that dynamic of you're there to serve me,
Just
you're there
serving
to
a
do.
purpose,
I don't care
yeah.
about you, I care about me. And this leads to more narcissism. And look in society today. Since the age of the internet, narcissism
Yes.
is growing. There's this sense of entitlement. You're there to serve me. You're there to make me feel good. If you're not doing something, if you hurt my feelings, it's your fault. And,
Yes.
and this whole dynamic is a consequence of brain circuitry changing, where we don't have an empathy and a care for people. We only care for self.
Right.
And this is one of the things that happens.
So does it make a difference at what age or level of development or maturity that a person is at when they're exposed to pornography?
Of course it does. The younger a person is, then the more pliable the brain, the more changeable the brain, the more deeply wired in it gets. So if people begin viewing porn, particularly in the adolescent period is a period in which the brain is very much state of flux. You get I think in girls, in girls and boys, it peaks in girls at 12 and girls at age 11, boys at age 12. There is a wave of neurogenesis. New neurons are produced by the millions, followed by reshaping and repruning of the neural network. And this happens for puberty, secondary sexual development. And so in adolescence, people are wiring in certain aspects of their sexual arousal circuitry. What do they find sexually stimulating and pleasing and arousing and so forth? And so if in this age they get involved in some type of pornographic or some type of deviant sexual behaviors, then those types of things might be lifelong arousing to them, and they might have much more difficult time breaking free of it. And this is true for any addiction. Kids who start smoking as an adolescent will become more addicted to nicotine than if they start smoking in their 20s.
Makes sense.
So yes, there's a more vulnerable period. Pornography, though, you were asking me a little bit about the impact on the brain. The data shows that, brain science shows that porn viewing results in loss of gray matter to the higher cortex, prefrontal cortex. That's the law of exertion at work, because if you're not exercising it, you're not using it, you're losing it. And so as you lose that higher cortex, that helps contribute to that lack of empathy, that lack of discernment. Your reasoning capacities get undermined, your ability to problem solve, your ability to self-restrain. All of these things are compromised by that. Further, porn viewing undermines health and happiness. A study of 20,000 adults found that those who watched an X-rated movie in the last year were more likely to be divorced, more likely to have an extramarital affair, less likely to be happy, more likely to be unhappy with their lives and have marital conflict than those who don't watch that. And it goes back not just to the content, but the impact it's having on the brain, where we lose that self-governance and self-control.
Wow.
So as we wind this segment up, we'll pick up, I think, some more questions that we have in the next segment.
Welcome back to the Dr. Tim Jennings Show. Today we are discussing the problem, the scourge of pornography in our environment today. And we've been discussing some statistics that are just astounding at how prolific and widespread this problem is today. Dr. Jennings, is there a difference in the brain of a person, sexual activity viewing porn versus sexual activity in a loving monogamous marriage? What are the differences on the brain?
You know, that's an excellent question, and they're profound differences. Within a monogamous relationship, the relationship is established before the sexual intimacy is generally established,
Yeah.
which means that you're activating the circuits of empathy, compassion, love, concern. You've come to know the person. They've come to know you. There's a foundation of trust established in that relationship. And then in that foundation of trust, there's an openness and a sharing, a giving of oneself in which both partners are pleasurable to the other partner. And in that relationship, a cascade of neurochemicals take place in which bonding happens.
Yes.
And then the brain reward circuits actually rewire in such a way that the partner, the monogamous partner, becomes more pleasurable to you than anyone else in the environment. You actually have more dopamine secretion and activity in your pleasure circuits from that person than from other people. And this is how it was designed by God to be experienced. What happens though with sexual activity, one of the things that makes it pleasurable is you get a release of a whole bunch of neurochemicals. You get a release of norepinephrine and dopamine that makes you excited and gets you that stimulation, and that's what cocaine does to you. You get a release of serotonin and GABA, which is giving you that sense of the warm fuzzies that you can get, and that's what marijuana can do to you. You can get a sense of calm and a euphoric peace, and that's what heroin and narcotics do to you, because you get endorphins released. Okay, your brain's releasing endorphins during this time, and so you can see as your brain is releasing this why pornography can be very addictive. Well, you might say, well, then how come people in a monogamous relationship aren't becoming addicted? And that's because in a monogamous relationship where there's love and trust, your brain also releases oxytocin. And when your brain, and that helps you bond. It's a bonding chemical, and also vasopressin. These are bonding chemicals that your brain releases. And when your brain releases these, it actually prevents the resetting of the circuitry in these reward pathways that are consistent with addiction. So you don't get the addiction settings in your brain when you are in a loving monogamous relationship. But when you're doing pornography and there's not this bonding element going on, you're not getting the oxytocin, you're not getting the vasopressin. Additionally, you're getting, oftentimes there's a sense of guilt, there's a sense of shame, there's a sense of fear, there's a sense of, am I going to be caught, am I going to be worried, and so there's an anxiety element, and that actually suppresses further the oxytocin and vasopressin. And so that leads then to you're still getting the endorphins and the enkephalins and the dopamine and the serotonin and the GABA. You're getting these changes, but you're not getting the protective effects from the vasopressin and the oxytocin. And so that leads to changing in the brain that actually is consistent with addictions.
Needs more and more of that.
Yes, and so there's a definite brain change difference in the reward circuitry, in addition to what we said earlier about how we just experience people differently too.
Yes.
So yes, there's a big difference in sex in a monogamous relationship and then porn.
Gives you some amazing insight into the brilliance of God's original design.
It really does.
Describe it that way.
It really does, yeah.
So if we have somebody out there viewing, a person is struggling with porn, do you have some practical steps? Do you have some ways that they can go about breaking free from that addiction?
Yeah, step one, they have to admit they've got a problem.
They got a problem.
And the number one barrier for most people is, I can handle it. Oh, I won't view it anymore. I've got this under control. Oh, I only view it once every 7 days. And, 6 days I'm not viewing it. Just 7 1 out of 7. That's not bad. That's not really a problem. And so the first step, you have to acknowledge there's a problem. If you don't acknowledge there's a problem, you're not going to do anything constructive to resolve the problem.
Got it.
Okay, so number one, you have to, and that's where all the 12-step programs start with.
Is where it starts.
We admit that we are powerless over our addiction, our lives become unmanageable. You have to have that admission that there's a problem. Second is don't go it alone. You can't do this on yourself. If you look at the 12-step programs, always say, we admit that we are powerless over our addiction and our lives have become unmanageable. It's not I admit that I have become powerless. It's never always
I.
we.
And the crux are group meetings. There's always association.
Because it's understood that no individual, isolated and by themselves, can overcome addictions. You actually have to team up. And the second step is we admit, we recognize there's a power higher than ourselves that can restore us to sanity. So step one, admit you've got a problem. Step two, recognize you can't do this in your own strength. Recognize there's a power outside of yourself that can restore you to sanity, that can give you the strength, that can reset your neural circuits, that can help your brain rewire, that can bring influences to bear, that can heal the damage that's been caused by the addiction. That this is not beyond healing, but it's beyond your healing to do all by yourself in isolation alone. So you want to step out and you want to bring your higher power into the equation. And one of the keys to how the higher power, I understand how it works in our lives, is that God is the source of truth and will bring truth and comprehension to our minds in ways we can we can understand it, what we need. So God will bring a person with a porn addiction to the point that they understand they got a problem,
Right.
and they need to quit. But then God leaves them free to make the choice. It's not the person has to choose to say, yes, I admit I have a problem, and yes, I want to be free. That's their choice. Or deny, no, I can handle it, it's mine. Okay, you don't get the power until you make the choice.
Got it.
God will not make the choice for you. You've got to choose. And that choice isn't a one-time, I made that choice once 7 years ago.
I'm done.
No, it's a daily choice. It's a choice to not do certain behaviors you've done before. It's a choice to do something healthier.
Right.
And as you make the healthy choices, then you receive divine power that strengthens you, and over the course of time, your brain rewires. So healthy choosing is very important.
But there's something that happens in us by making that choice. Again, that's by design. Something changes in us when we actively choose.
That's exactly right, across all levels. And so many people, though, they become passive. They become fearful of making choices.
Yes.
Well, I've made bad choices. I've messed up. I don't want to be in charge. And sometimes in their churches, they get taught bad theology, like, well, you know what? You just surrender to God and let God take control. And
Jesus,
if He's in
take the
control,
wheel.
He takes the wheel, and I won't be in charge anymore. You know, this is not how God wants it. It's not how He
Right.
designs it. Last fruit of the Spirit, for those who value the Bible in Galatians, is self-control, not God control. God will not take control of any person's life from them, because to do that would destroy their individuality, make them a puppet, destroy their capacity to love, destroy their capacity for development, destroy their capacity for understanding. And so God will lead you in a way that you understand your options, but He leaves you free to choose the healthy one.
Got
And then
it.
when you make the choice for the healthy, then you can receive divine power to strengthen you to succeed in that choice. But that temptation will come back to you several times until you really make the choice to put it to death.
Excellent.
Okay? One of the things that you need to do also, in addition to admit you have a problem, don't go it alone and bring your higher power in, choose to say no, is to identify your triggers.
Oh, okay.
Okay, triggers, and replace them or avoid them. Triggers can be things like places.
Yes.
If you have a certain place you viewed porn, it can be the computer or the iPhone or the iPad, electronic database. If that's been associated now with the porn use, when you pull that up, it's going to trigger a craving or a desire.
Yeah.
And so you may have to, for a period of time, not use some of that equipment. And then, even if for a period of time you haven't used it, when you go back to use the equipment again, you may find again that urge is coming back. Okay?
Even if you thought it was defeated.
Right. And so you need to actively identify your known triggers and then bring strategically things into bear that will help you resist, overcome, and eliminate them as triggers.
Right.
For instance, if the computer is your trigger, I'm going to tell any guy out there who's got a porn problem, if the computer's your trigger, I want you to imagine you're sitting down at your computer and your mom's sitting down with you.
Right.
Are you triggered now? Or does her presence change the dynamic?
Yes.
Such that, hey, you know what? I'm really not wanting to bring that up right now. You have a different desire. Okay?
Right.
And that's part of what has to happen. We have to change, and we have to decondition ourselves to some of these triggers. It's important to do that. You might need to, some triggers might be people, might be circumstances, might be certain emotions. So we need to identify those. We need to avoid, people with porn problems need to avoid soft porn. Soft porn.
The gateway drug.
Swimsuit editions. The Victoria's Secret television programs.
Yes.
These types of events you really may need to avoid because they will trigger in your mind. You need to also learn how to govern your imagination. Your imagination. What we've discovered in neuroscience is that we can put somebody in a scanner that scans their brain activity and have them play a piece of music.
Okay.
And we can see which neural circuits activate. Then we can take the keyboard away, and we can have them imagine playing the piece of music, and the same circuits fire, you see? So you can avoid a behavior, but if you're still doing it in your imagination,
Right.
your brain is still firing those circuits, and those circuits won't degrade. The law of exertion we've talked about. If you're exercising those circuits, and they're getting stronger. So if you're exercising your imagination, you have to stop your imagination. Stop, no, and activate other circuits instead. That's why the Bible says every thought must be brought into captivity to Jesus Christ.
That's important. I know some folks that have struggled, and I mean, they've gone to great lengths. They've cut off, let's say they cut off the internet in their house, cut off the broadband. They may have either gotten rid of their computers, gotten rid of their smartphones, and gone back to an old-timey flip phone. or if they keep the computer in the house, they keep it in a public place so that the whole family's around, like you were saying. But like you were saying with the imagination, even if you cut off all of those avenues, if you're not governing your imagination and your thought processes, there still may not be any change happening in your heart and mind.
That is absolutely correct. You might need to get filters on the computer and some of these things.
Right.
Get an accountability partner. Get somebody that you regularly, that knows the problem, that knows you have the problem. This is the 12 steps you have to have a sponsor.
Right.
But get an accountability that knows you've got the problem, and we'll check in with you on a routine and regular basis.
Or that you can call.
Also, brilliant. Also that you can call if you're having an urge and you're really struggling, that you can pick up the phone and call and they can talk you through that moment. But get an accountability partner. Not only avoid the negative materials, it's critical you start feeding your mind mature, healthy, spiritually uplifting, altruistic, compassionate, learning to see people as people again. And this is one of the critical things that if you find yourself tempted to view porn, one of the things that can help you would be to imagine going to your computer, opening a porn website and seeing your own daughter.
Wow.
Or your granddaughter. And suddenly, if you imagine that, hopefully, if you're anywhere still healthy, you're going to be revolted and say, oh my gosh, no. Well, everybody you're viewing is somebody's daughter, somebody's granddaughter. Seeing people as people, having empathy for them, caring about them, caring about their welfare, this can significantly help you overcome. So putting all this together, I want to tell people who are struggling with this problem that your brain is pliable, it's changeable. You have the power in the decisions you make and governors of yourself. If you begin making healthy choices, putting things into place, you can change the course of your life and go down a new pathway with new brain circuits. If you'd like to get some more information, please visit our website, timjenningsmd.com.